Hello everyone, and welcome to Delivering Digital Transformation in the Philippines and Indonesia with Higher Education, the latest in a series of webinars brought to you in collaboration between Times Higher Education and Coursera for Campus. My name is Alistair Lawrence. I'm the Special Projects Editor at Times Higher Education, and I'll be chairing today's discussion. As I mentioned, this is part of a series of webinars that we've been doing around the world, talking to senior leaders from academia in different countries about how the coronavirus is affecting the digital transformation where they work. The impacts in the Philippines and Indonesia is going to be the focus of today's discussion. So I'd just like to firstly thank everyone for joining us today. I think we've got a great panel of leaders who are going to discuss the topics at hand. If I can just ask everybody to turn on their webcams, then we will be able to begin with the introductions and talking about how the digital transformation is taking place at their institution and cover off the discussion points for today. These include upgrading universities' physical estates to complement their digital transformations, how degree structures may need to change in order to improve access and employability, improving the Philippines and Indonesia's digital infrastructure through digital courses and blended learning, identifying skills shortages to create job-ready graduates for a fast-changing economy, future planning for short courses, lifelong learning, and alumni engagement. So perhaps if we can start and go around the group, I know it's always difficult on Zoom because it's we're not in the same space together. But Raymond, perhaps I could come to you first. If you could just tell us a little bit about your institution and your role, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Raymond Tan. I'm VC for Research and Innovation at De La Salle University, or a private non-stock nonprofit university in the heart of Manila. And of course, just like everyone else, we've had to make quick adjustments, and we've done reasonably well as far as the lecture content goes. I think after the initial shock, both the staff and students have adjusted. We're having problems where physical presence is required, as in the case of research projects and lab subjects, which we're trying to sort out.
Okay,
so I look forward to learning from this webinar.
Thank you very much, Raymond. Philip, perhaps we'll come to you if you could just introduce yourself briefly.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Philip Munkada. I am the Vice President for Academic Affairs of the University of San Carlos in Cebu City. We are a Catholic university and we have something like 12,000 students. We are using Canvas for our LMS, and so far everything is going well, except that there's some burnout among students and even teachers. Our problem is how to deliver our laboratory courses.
Okay.
We hope will be available next year and next semester. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. Maria, perhaps can you introduce yourself next, please?
Yes, hello, I'm Maria Luz Vilches. I am the Vice President for the Loyola Schools at Ateneo de Manila University. We have also, migrated quickly into online mode, both for work and also for online learning and teaching. We have designed for our teachers a specific teacher training program for online learning. We call it Adaptive Design for Learning Program, which is run by our Science and Art of Learning and Teaching, or SALT Institute. And we have migrated a lot of our processes to what we call the Ateneo Blue Cloud. We have also done an online hub for student services, where if there is any problem with online learning or anything, they can just email the hub and then we respond to their needs. But also, I think in other schools, we are trying to see whether we can open lab courses on site. We're working on a proposal that's going to be sent to CHED for permission today.
Great,
so that's
very timely, thank you. Marlene, can you briefly introduce yourself, please?
I'm a faculty on leave. I used to be Vice Chancellor of Academics of DLSU, working with Dr. Tan. I'm actually here to learn about the insights of everybody in the session.
No problem, thank you. Reynaldo, can you please introduce yourself? Just tell us a little bit about your institution, please.
I'm Reynaldo Vea. I'm president of the Mapua University. We've been doing online courses since 2012 using open source LMSs. In 2017, we outgrew this open source LMSs and subscribed to an industrial strength proprietary one. And by the time the pandemic struck last March, we were 100% on blended learning mode already. Still, it was a challenge to suddenly shift to 100% fully online. So we were surprised, but really not caught flat-footed by that. Well, we've been permitted to offer 100% fully online programs, and we're focused on that now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Aditya, I don't know if you can hear us. If you could turn your camera on, that would be great. If we could get a brief introduction from you.
Yeah, hello. Hi, thanks, Alistair. I'm Aditya Naik. I'm a part of Coursera, and I'm the Enterprise Account Director working predominantly in Philippines and Indonesia. I connected with over here, not directly. Dr. Cheryl, I think, who's going to come, I've connected with her in the past, and a few more. Look forward to having a great, engaging discussion with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And Puneet and Dr. Maylena, if you can hear us and you can turn your cameras on, that would be great. We'd just like to get a brief introduction for you if you're available. Reynaldo, also, I'm just being asked if you can tilt your webcam down just a little bit, if that's possible, just so we can. There we go.
There you
We can
go.
see better.
Okay.
That's
Sorry.
all right. That's fine. Don't worry about it. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, great. Right. I think we've got everybody that we should. Oh, sorry, Eclavia. If you could briefly introduce yourself as well, that would be great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, Alistair. So my name is Eklavya. I'm the regional director for Coursera and based in New Delhi in India. Happy to be speaking with all the academic leaders from Philippines and Indonesia. We've been fortunate to work with thousands of universities in the last 1 year. So happy to share some of those insights today and also learn from the academic leaders of Philippines and Indonesia today. So look forward to be speaking with you all.
Great, thank you. Right, I think we've moved through the introductions. So it'd be great to dive straight in and talk about the first couple of points for discussion today. So we start at the beginning with perhaps a lot of the similar conversations we've been had all around the world in times higher education, where we raised the issue of universities' physical estates and how they've changed so much, how the requirement for your physical estate is changing. A couple of the leaders already mentioned the difficulty of finding a balancing act for what courses to hold in person and on campus, and particularly the subjects that revolve around STEM and collaborative learning in laboratories and things like that, inevitably perhaps pose the greatest challenge. So if we could start by just discussing the need to upgrade your university's physical estates to complement the digital transformation. This is obviously a process that isn't going to happen overnight, but it's what we see when we talk to different leaders from different countries is that it's a step-by-step change, and there is some trial and error involved along the way. Raymond, you raised the point on your introduction about the challenge of changing the physical estates and how you work in person with students and with staff. Could you share a little bit about your experiences, please?
Well, at the moment in the Philippines, we actually have, we're not allowed to open campuses for classes. So we've had to work around that and postpone lab classes where we can. And the problem there is the curriculum has a specified sequence of courses, which we've had to relax. And if we need chemistry lab courses, for example, or we have postponed those indefinitely. We don't know when we'll be allowed to reopen. On the other hand, of course, we have reopened the university, our campuses, partially for research projects. So staff who have projects which are funded by, say, government funds, are allowed to proceed at a slower pace than they normally would. And one of the features that we've adopted is a 3-week cycle. So we have a free group division of the entire university. So you only get to go into campus 1 week out of 3 weeks. And then you self-quarantine for the next 2 weeks, which means that the fastest that any project can proceed is about 30% of what it was originally planned to proceed at. So that's a major constraint that we have. We're still trying to figure out whether videos are a reasonable substitute for lab courses, because we can have staff enter the campus and do the activities, but not having hands-on might be problematic from an educational standpoint.
Thank you. Yes, it's certainly something we flagged in the editorial reporting that Times Higher Education's undertaken over the past 6 months. Subjects such as organic chemistry are perhaps top of the list when people are talking about how there's such a huge challenge when it comes to moving those type of STEM courses into a virtual environment. And while there are platforms that are emerging now, perhaps one such as Lab Exchange and others that are looking at how to solve that problem, I think the general consensus that we've covered so far on our pages has been that this is something that the Academy is still grappling with, and there is going to be some trial and error along the way. Philip, I was wondering if we could come to you, if you could just tell us a little bit about how life on campus is changing and how you are balancing the curricula alongside that.
Here in Cebu, actually, we don't have any students in campus.
Okay.
Everybody is doing online, and we are very careful if we accept a group of students and there is COVID, then we might be penalized or something like that. So we're very strict, and we're just hoping that next semester things will be better, and because of that, maybe we can have laboratory classes. But in the meanwhile, everything is online, and with the spotty internet connection, everybody has problems. The teachers as well as the students have problems.
Yes, I think we can all sympathise with being left at the mercy of your Wi-Fi in order to try and do your job. But yes, Maria, if you could give us some insights into what's happening at your campus, your institution, that would be great.
At the other universities, we're fully online, but we have accepted research students, especially at the postgrad level, so they can come to the campus, but one by one, but not really officially like that. But we're trying to do that in the second semester. For example, the proposal that we have sent to CHED includes only for those who are graduating students, because we have pushed the lab courses for the non-graduating students to the other semesters next year. But for the graduating students, we have pitched for example, chemistry courses, material science and engineering courses, as well as biology courses. So that's for the next semester. But in terms of, there's no one on campus. In fact, our campus now is inhabited by whole life birds and migratory birds, etc., because they like it there since there's a lot of space. But on the other hand, our library, our Rizal library, has a lot more ebooks, online journals, and all the rest of it. So what we have done is, since our students are able to access those materials, what we have also told them is that if there are like chapters in a book that they will really need that are not online, like for example, Philippine history or things like that, they can email. There's a 24-hour service email to the library. They can say, can you have this chapter digitized? And we send it to them. We send it to them for free. And if students as well don't have enough bandwidth, or they don't have connectivity out in the provinces where they are, they can just email to us or send us a text message, and then we can produce printed out material for them for the courses that they need. So that's what we're trying to do.
The 24/7 service that you mentioned, I mean, planning the logistics of that, how have you worked with that challenge?
Well, during the day, there are people who come to the campus to manage that in the Rizal library, because they have to maintain as well certain things. And then they do shifting. At a certain point, I think there's an automatic reply, so that the students can just, or the staff can just recall what the students have requested for, and then they do it the following day.
Okay, great, thank you. Reynaldo, if you could tell us a little bit about how it's working at your institution, that would be great. Just what does the physical space look like now? What's it being used for?
Well, like most schools, our school is deserted. except for the Treasury and the Registrar's Office, and some of us officers who have to sign some papers. There's still checks and diplomas to be signed, but not every day. We don't come every day to school. But what the national government or CHED is grappling with now is how to open gradually. They want to see schools or examples of schools that will handle the physical classes, what the classrooms will look like, how the traffic inside the school will look like. They want to see, sample schools that will do this. They're also considering what the disposition of the barangays or the local government units would be. Do the schools have to ask permission from the local government units to operate? There are such issues being worked out. But if and when they do allow physical classes to happen, and I think they're partial to a 3-week cycle, although they don't rule out the Weizmann Institute 2-week cycle of 410, they will still allow the option of a fully online courses. They'll allow schools to retain that. Until when, we don't know. But yes, you may open face-to-face, but you can still go for the online classes. I think which will just work as well, because some parents may want face-to-face, but others may still be apprehensive about sending their kids, to such classes. On our part, we've just sharpened our implementation of online, and but we really do prefer blended learning, where you can combine the best of face-to-face and online. So as far as labs are concerned, we've subscribed to 2 providers of simulated laboratories, but we cannot cover everything. So it's less than an ideal situation, but better than nothing for both our college and high school classes. So
Okay,
that's
great.
our situation.
Okay, great. It's been interesting really looking at the reporting that we've done at Times Higher Education over the past 6 months, because if you were to look at particularly students' views of this issue about whether they preferred online or in person, there was actually quite a lot of opposition to it if you look back in March or April. And then by the time surveys were done again by various different bodies at around August or September time, there was almost maybe perhaps a 10% sway in some cases of students who were now, they wanted to begin their degree online at least, and they were keen just to start the university experience or continue their studies and have it move forward as quickly as possible. Now, as reopening programs start and stop around the world, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the situation in the UK, but let's say it's perhaps not the clearest instruction we're receiving from our leaders about what we should be doing. It has posed a challenge, and what I was wondering is, to what extent are you speaking to your students and listening to their feedback and managing their expectations, and how is this influencing what you think you might do in future? Maria, if you'd like to start us off with that.
Yes, it's interesting that you asked that question, because since March, we have been doing a lot of students fora, not just students, but parents as well. And it's amazing that in the past, when you had on-site meetings with students, there were only a handful that would turn up. But this time there are thousands of students, following and interacting really, and they're very interested. So we have done that, especially telling them about what's happening, especially if there's feedback, we hold a forum. And then we also do surveys, and we have a student body. The student leaders in the university are very active. They also have their own mechanism for feedback, and they're very interactive with the administration. So we get a lot of these things. And then once we get something that's maybe a little negative in terms of their own experience, especially because we're just beginning to do online learning, we immediately reach out to them, and they tell us, they know now the mechanism, so they're not afraid. They tell us about what the specific concern is, and we reach to the teachers and we reach to everybody. So it's like an ongoing thing. Right now, I mean, during this couple of months, we have been doing FGDs to follow up on the surveys that we have done. And I think it's important right now because we have parents as well as part of the entire process. And even our Ateneo Blue Cloud, we have a section there for parents, we have a section for students, we have a primer, and that kind of primer is updated now and then to include the concerns and to see how we can respond to the concerns.
Okay, thank you. Raymond, I saw you nodding. Do you have a similar series of feedback in place with students?
One of the things we've done is we've put in place mental health support for both students and staff, employees in general. So there's like a hotline available if they need some kind of psychological support.
Okay, that's okay. And Philip, is there future planning at your institution as how the physical space may change or may need to change over the course of this academic year?
We are actually thinking about that, but there's no actual and concrete plan for that because we don't know how things will evolve and when it will be changed. But so far, we deployed the survey and we're waiting for the results so that we can more or less gauge what to do next semester. But then everything will be according to the government's plan. Even if you want to go to school, but the government says, no, you cannot, what can we do? We cannot do anything.
Yes, it's a huge challenge for all institutions because obviously on one hand you're trying to manage the expectations of your staff and your students, and as Raymond said, also support whatever needs they have in order to get through this. But on the other hand, you're also subject to legislation which could completely change your approach based on a single policy decision. Renal, how is that looking for you? Is there forward planning for the physical space itself? Is there a consultation with staff and students that's informing that?
Well, yeah, we have laid out our classrooms to abide by the at least 1 meter distance, physical distance between occupants of the room. And under a 10-4 system, we realized that the students can quarantine after showing up for 4 days, but the faculty members, if you divide the class, will have to be there week in, week out. So we were thinking of a physical barrier, I think it's plexiglass, that could isolate the professor. And we were thinking even of speakers so that the sound will carry through adequately. And then we have to open the windows periodically to refresh the air inside the classroom. Cannot all be air conditioned, recirculating air. So we have plans for that as well. And in the stairwells will be one way. For example, students cannot meet. You cannot have 2 lanes in the stairways. Things like this, and of course the other health protocols. Then we'll rig up the classroom so there will be cameras to record the sessions. Rather an expensive proposition, but for those students, for example, we flip the classroom and you have your session where the students can interact with the teacher face to face. Still, some students may not come or are not able to come. There's the synchronous option where they can join the discussion synchronously. But if we record the session, as everyone knows, then you have a record of it that the students can view asynchronously. So we're designing our syllabi also. So, the teaching learning activities can be converted from one form to another. But physically, that's it. It's just the classroom and also where business transaction will be conducted between the students or the parents and our staff. We are reconfiguring that so it's physically safe.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So just to note your point about how the syllabus are changing and the courses are changing in response to the shift online. There's also, in addition to just dealing with the practical elements of needing to respond to how you're changing the physical space on campus, very heavily linked to that, of course, is how degree structures may need to change. And this is being done also in the context of there being a huge economic downturn, which is occurring at the moment, and a lot of job losses. And even before the pandemic, there was a lot of coverage, particularly in our reportage, about how the nature of work was changing very rapidly, and and the jobs of the future were largely unknown, and there was a need to educate students differently as a result of that, because they're joining a job market where it's very hard to predict what type of jobs they may have, and also the prediction that the jobs that they do have may change over the course of perhaps a 30 or 40-year career. So I was wondering if anyone had any insights into how they think the degree structures at their institution are changing. Maria, you mentioned about the adaptive design program and moving things onto the cloud. Have the structures of degrees started changing already at your institution, or is it something you're anticipating in future?
Well, not at the moment. We have our curriculum has got a large, what we call core curriculum, and that is shared by everybody from first year to fourth year. So we have sort of rearranged that within the program. But right now, because the science labs courses are not being offered, so we had to shift internally the programs of the science students, because they have to push, their lab courses for next year and bring in a few others. So that's so far we have gone in.
Okay. Raymond, you obviously mentioned the challenge of moving STEM courses online. Is your institution in a similar situation to Maria's?
Yes, we are. I would think most of us in the audience are grappling with this issue, but I'd like to bring up a couple of others which are related to this.
Of course.
As Maria said, we pushed back the lab courses indefinitely until we get the go signal from the Commission on Higher Education. But I think one unique problem is our pre-med courses are in a strange situation, because obviously we're going to need healthcare workers soon. And if the pipeline dries up, the med schools would have no intake or would have drastically reduced intake of new students. The second point I want to make is that a lot of our programs have mandatory industry internship. And now we're having a difficult time getting placement for them, except for a handful of firms which are allowing it to be done on a work from home basis for interns.
Okay, yeah, no, that's yes. It's interesting to hear that the pipeline of students into the job market and into those collaborations with industry that are often so important is being affected already. Philip, is the structure of degrees changing at your institution in response to this? Oh, sorry, Philip, you're on mute. So we always get one through the hour. It's fine. Go ahead, please.
We haven't changed that much, really. We're trying to manage with what we have. But the main problem with us here, because we are in the Visayas, some of our students are in the islands, different islands, and it's quite difficult, even if the government would say, okay, you can come in. But if the local government does not allow it, or the island where the student is coming from does not allow it, then nothing will happen. It's quite complicated in our place. We are in Cebu, and our students are from Samar, Leyte, and Mindanao, and all other places. So it complicates a lot more things. And there were students who are stranded in Cebu. They could not go home. We have to, in terms of courses, we have not changed really a lot. We stuck with the present, with what we have today.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. At this point, I think Eclavia might be a good point to bring you in from a supplier side point of view. I mean, obviously, I've had various conversations with your colleagues of Coursera in different territories around the world over the past 6 months, and the response that you've managed in collaboration with with the higher education industry is pretty remarkable, perhaps powered by the fact you've had such a huge increase in the number of collaborations that you've got. I think I'm right in saying there's about 70 million learners on your platform now. So if you're able to perhaps give us some insights as what changes that Coursera has observed in the past 6 months regarding the adoption of blended and online learning across the globe. If you could share some insights on perhaps what learners are learning and what this means from a digital transformation perspective, that would be really helpful. I believe that we've got about 15 minutes maybe, where if you could talk us through the findings, that would be really appreciated.
All right, perfect, Alistair. Thanks for bringing me in. I was listening to the speakers before, and I must congratulate, and it's really commendable the way the higher education institutes have been responding to this change, because you can't prepare for something like COVID. And what we are seeing right now is how the higher education institutes are responding to this change globally. And we are thinking that how can we be part of that in helping higher education institutes respond to this change. And I was listening to some of the comments that the co-panelists made earlier. So, I mean, we can't still solve for the problems like Dr. Maria said. How do you digitize a physical content or make it available to the students who can't access it online, print it out and ship it out? But we definitely are looking at some of the things that we can be part of. So, for example, Dr. Via said that how the institutions are looking at bringing blended learning model. He also talked about how in the physical space, you are opening the windows, but what we are doing is in the online space, we are opening the windows for the students to get access to the content of the outside world so that they become job ready. Also, what Dr. Tan said is some of the things that beyond the core curriculum, which you can't measure, but are equally important, something like mental health. So how do we make sure that both faculty members as well as students are handheld very, very well in these times so that they are very, very secure in the current environment, but also are ready for the future. And few things that came out very, very clearly in all the things that I heard was how do we make sure that the students are job ready so that they get the skills which are very, very important. How do we make sure that some of the lab environment can be simulated? And third is the industry and academia partnership. And these are some of the things that we have been hearing from the institutions across the world. And in the next few slides, I plan to share some of the insights based on what we have seen, heard, as well as based on our direct interaction with the higher education institutes. Now, we know the impact of COVID, but we look at COVID more from the healthcare perspective. But if you look at the impact of COVID in the job world, it's massive. It was not evident in April or March earlier this year. But if you look at some of the reports, it says that more than 435 million jobs are going to get impacted because of COVID. And this is a massive, massive number. The other thing that we've seen in the last few months is because the campuses were closed and still are closed across many countries, including Philippines, 1.6 billion students were not able to continue their regular education. And what we saw as a result on our platform is that we saw a 644% increase in the number of enrollments on our platform. And this was clear that both people in the job world as well as the students are utilizing this time to build skills, but also continue the education because they are not able to go to the campuses. The positive outcome of all this is that in the last few months, what we are seeing and hearing across the APAC region as well as globally is that the higher education bodies, authorities, and departments are looking for change. So they are making a lot of changes in the education policy. One of the changes that we have seen in some of the countries, including India, that up to 40% of the credit can be earned if you do the courses online. We're seeing that in Malaysia, Indonesia, also believe CHED is also doing a lot of work to bring some changes in the higher education policy. Now, before we come to what we're seeing in the university space, it's also important to look at what the job market is going through, because ultimately the students, as most of you said, are worried about the job because the jobs are impacted in a big, big way. And this is very clear in terms of many of the research and the studies that have been done. So World Economic Forum earlier did a study and which said that almost 40% of the jobs would undergo change in next 2 years, which is very scary as a working professional, because if I'm part of that group, in 2 years time, I'll need a different set of skills to continue the same job, which means I need to continue learn throughout my career, which was not there earlier. That is also because of the fact that now the shelf life of a technical skill has reduced just to about 2.5 years. Earlier, if you acquired a technology skill, a tech skill, that would have lasted for 5, 7 years, but now that has shrunk to just 2 years, which means that the world, both working professional and students, need to gear up for the working life. Coupled with this fact is the fact that a lot of jobs stand being risked due to automation. And this is again a study that was done by McKinsey in 2018, which says that most of the jobs which are not related to high skills, the jobs which do not require higher education, will be impacted due to automation. And this is very clear from the red bubbles that you see on the bottom of the screen on the right side. Most of the jobs which do not require high skills, high degrees will get impacted. Take, for example, customer service representative, which you see here as a yellow bubble. When was the last time when you called up a call center, you actually spoke to a person? Generally, you end up listening to an IVR or you end up chatting with a chat bot. But these are some of the jobs which will get impacted or are getting impacted due to automation. But on the positive side, if you look at the left side of the axis, all the blue bubbles which require high skills, require higher education, are the jobs which are not only secure, but also the jobs which give you higher wages. And this becomes very, very clear that both for working professional as well as students, more importantly for the students who are getting ready for the job world, to acquire higher skills in the domains that they are interested in. And this is just one of the challenges that the universities across the world are grappling with. Since we have seen that how the skills are becoming more important, the shelf life is reducing, that's why the student employability is becoming more and more difficult. And it's important that the student, while she is in the campus, acquires all the skills which are relevant for the job world. We all know, because of the job market being impacted due to COVID, the cash flows and the cost structures are getting impacted for the universities. Also, the capacity which already has in the university, how do we leverage that capacity to increase more number of students to be enrolled with the same capacity? As we speak with many, many universities, most of the universities have kind of shelved their plans to start a new campus, build a new campus or a building, but they're utilizing the same capacity to have more enrollments. And the other piece, which is not much talked about, but I think it's very, very important, is faculty development. I'm really impressed, and we should commend the faculty how they have responded to this change, because they were not equipped for that. But the way the faculty members, the professors and teachers across the world have responded to this change is really amazing. But that was one time. But how do we make sure that these faculty members are well supported for the changes that are going to come in the near future? And it's very clear, because of these challenges, the university which innovates a lot, the university which digitizes the platform, the change that the university brings in the way the learning happens, is would be the choice for the students as well as for the industry. And these were some of the learnings that we saw in the last 6-8 months when we were going through our discussions with the universities. And we said that, being a higher education learning platform, how do we support the universities in these difficult times? And what we did was made all the courses available for free for the universities across the world for 6 months. And it was very, very heartening to be part of this, because we could support more than 3,700 universities across the globe in different regions through these difficult times. So whether it was Europe, the Asia Pacific region, or the US, across the world, the universities looked at this platform in these difficult times and helped their students to learn. And equally heartening was to see that the students responded very well. And Alistair, you alluded to this earlier. In March, April, the apprehension was very high when it came to online learning. But if you see some of these figures, more than 2.4 million students enrolled in 21 million courses, which is almost 8 to 9 courses per student. And this was a good signal to the universities, who were also not very sure whether the online learning format would be taken very, very well by the students. Also, one of the other things that came out of this understanding in last 6 months was that more than 70% of the students used our mobile platform to access the content. And this is very relevant for the regions that we are part of, the Asian countries, where the internet penetration would be low, access to the laptops may be low. And what the students have done is use their mobile platform to access the content and then downloaded it and learned in the offline mode. These were some of the learnings that we saw during the COVID period. But going ahead, as the universities start to digitize themselves, as the universities look to innovate themselves, we are thinking, how do we make sure that we are able to help and support the universities in these journeys? And that we are planning to do with Coursera for Campus, which was announced last year. And today, as you know, more than 3,700 institutions are already using it. But just as a context about Coursera, today Coursera is the largest MOOC platform in the world. More than 72 million learners across the world are using this platform today. Almost 20 million learners of these 72 million are from the Asia Pacific region itself. In addition to the campuses, there are organizations, institutions, and government bodies which are also using Coursera platform. And this is very important for the universities and the academic institutions to know that the job world is also using the same platform to acquire skills. And that's why it's important that the students also start learning on the platform and acquire the skills what the job world is looking. And what these institutions as well as learners get access to is content from 200 plus partners on our platform. And these partners include 150 plus top universities of the world and 50 plus industry partners. And this is very, very relevant to some of the points that Dr. Tan made in terms of how do we make sure that there is an industry exposure given to the students. They are able to learn something what the industry is looking at. And all of this is brought to you in the form of Coursera for Campus, and just kind of sharing some of the top highlights of Coursera for Campus. First and foremost is obviously the content. And as I said, the content comes from the top sources of the world. The other piece is the authoring part. And this is very, very important in these times and also as we move ahead to 2021, is that we've seen that the faculty members were creating some courses using their mobile or some other collaboration tool. But right now what we are making available as part of Coursera for Campus is the authoring tool. So the same authoring platform that one of our partners like a Yale or Johns Hopkins use can be made available to your faculty members as part of Coursera for Campus. And they can use the same authoring tool to create courses, content, and assessment for your own students. So your students will have the flexibility of learning both from the content which is from our university and academic partners, as well as created by your own faculty members. The other part which I think most of you talked about is how do we make sure that the hands-on learning is available on the platform. I'm going to talk a little bit more about in the next few slides. And also on the job ready part, because these are the two very, very essential outcomes of learning for students today. One is how deeply they are able to acquire the skills which are relevant for them. And then how do they know what are the skills which are relevant from the job perspective. And all this comes to the campus in a platform which is very easy to use by the students, as we've seen that how millions of students have already used it. But also you can integrate this platform with your learning management software. As I heard that most of the campuses today are using some kind of LMS. So you can integrate Coursera for Campus platform with their learning management software. In the next few slides, quickly, I'm going to talk and touch about a few of those things. So first is the content. The content on our platform is in 11 different domains, right? From data science to arts and humanities to computer science and other fields which are relevant for, I think, most of you. These content, the content and courses are upgraded very, very frequently. We want to make sure that the students get access to the latest content as well as the most relevant content. And that's why we add almost 50 courses every month so that the students not only get access to the current content, but also in a year's time, they get access to 500 to 600 new courses which are created by the partners, which include the top universities like Yale, Princeton, Illinois, Michigan, in US, HSC Paris, INSEAD, University of London in Europe, as well as NTU, NUS, HKUST, Macquarie in the Asia Pacific region. And when the students do these courses, it is not just view only. You can just see the video and get pass the course. You have to pass the assessments. There's a grade book which is made available to the campuses. And only once the student passes the assessment, the student gets a certificate. And this is very, very important because in today's world, if a student has a certificate from AWS or Facebook or Salesforce or Google, it's valued very, very highly. And these are the partners which create courses on our platform. The other thing which is very, very important, and I just wanted to touch upon this because most of you talked about, is how do we make sure that the student gets access to the online learning environment, but also gets access to the virtual labs. So while we still can't do virtual labs for, say, chemistry lab, we can't simulate a mechanical engineering lab, but what we have made available is 500 plus guided projects, which gives a simulation kind of a practice to a student. I'll just tell you a little bit more about this. So if you see the window here, on the right side, you see an expert sharing the step-by-step guide on a project. It could be a software, it could be something related to big data, Tableau, Salesforce. And on the left side, what students generally struggle with is access to that particular data, access to that particular software. In the form of guided project, what we've made available is that the student will be able to get access to the virtual lab then and there on the same window and can practice live while the recorded session on the guided project is happening. So a student doesn't need to go to another laptop, another computer or download the software. The student can practice then and there, and we have 500 plus guided projects, which we tend to plan to increase to about 1,000 by the end of this year. So this is a great way of mastering the skill beyond the courses which are there on the platform. And this is important from the job world because, as I said earlier, some of these skills students are developing today using the guided projects. And we launched guided projects earlier this year. And if you can see, in last 5 months, more than 1.5 million students have taken guided projects. And these are short, simple projects of one hour or so. And if you see the top three, these are guided projects like how do you create your first Python program, introduction to HTML, building your own website using HTML. And these guided projects give a very, very hands-on experience to the students to learn beyond the content which is there on the platform. And this helps the students for the job world because we work with 2,500 plus large companies across industries, across different regions. And we know that across the different use cases, how the skills are needed in different industries. So as a student, if I want to pursue a career in telecom, I want to join Samsung, or if I want to pursue a career in a pharma company like Novartis, what are the skills which are relevant for me? We are able to provide those kind of insights because we're working with 2,500 such companies across the world. Also, we were keen to understand what do we mean by jobs of the future or skills of the future. And what we did, since we have 70 million plus learners on our platform, we looked at what are the skills these learners are developing on our platform and how the different countries are faring against each other. And we looked at how different countries across the world, as well as in Asia, are comparing when it comes to skill development. We know that most of the Asian countries are looking to have a bigger global presence in next 10 to 20 years. When it comes to skilling, I think there's a lot of work to be done. Other than maybe Singapore or Australia or New Zealand, most of the countries in ASEAN and South Asia region are still lagging in some of the important skills which are related to the future skills. And as we look at some of those skill areas, it becomes very, very clear that the top 3 skill areas or the domains are data science, business, and computer science, because these are the top domains on which the content is used on a platform, both by students as well as, more importantly, by the working world. So it doesn't matter whether I want to be a scientist, I want to be a banker, I want to be part of a telecom company. The basic data skills, the basic business skills, and the basic tech skills are very, very important for everyone. And that's how most of the universities across the world are today leveraging the platform. And these these are some of the ways we are seeing that the universities are leveraging the platform. Depending on how the local authorities or the education policies allow, most of the universities are using for credit. It could be standalone, it could be blended learning, as Dr. Levier was also saying, but it could also be multidisciplinary, because it's important that each student, irrespective of what stream that student is, needs to have a broader horizon, needs to have a multidisciplinary approach. So if I am a student of engineering, I still need to understand a little bit of about communication. I still need to understand a little bit about leadership, and similarly for other domains as well. And what we provide as part of the platform, and just we'll wrap up in next 1 minute or so, is that curriculum guidance, because we want to make sure that our courses are mapped to your curriculum, because if it is for credit, we want to make sure that the courses are aligned to your curriculum, and we provide that guidance. And then there are different teams from implementation to customer success to handhold you, to program manage, and to make sure that you arrive and get the results what you intend to as part of the platform. And quickly, I talked about the different domains, but just wanted to share with you that we're working with many universities globally and looking at what are the domains that we are working with. So whether it's an engineering school, a school in medicine, healthcare, arts and humanities. So we work with different universities and colleges in these domains. And we are constantly upgrading the platform. And one of the things that we are launching soon is integration with Zoom. And some of you talked about it. So right now, what we are planning to come out with is Zoom is coming out with Zaps, which is Zoom apps in this quarter. So Coursera will integrate with Zoom. So if a faculty member does a session on Zoom and it's recorded, it will automatically be used as a content on our platform, so that you kind of reuse what we have already created using Zoom. So these are some of the things that you want to make sure that help the faculty members in creating a blended learning model for your education institute. So there are many other things, but I know that I'm just running out of time. So just wanted to share some perspective and happy to answer any specific questions.
Thanks, Hector. Thank you, Hector. It's always interesting to have a sort of industry supplier's point of view, because, like I say, the sheer number of universities that you're working with around the world means that you're in a position where you can comment on certain trends. I just wanted to pull a couple of points out there that I thought were interesting. One was the spread about the predictions for what type of subjects are going to become more popular in the future. And the other one is obviously the rate of change and how skills will need to be renewed at a much faster pace compared to how they have done in the past. I was wondering if any of the panelists have seen already a change in the requirements for the type of subjects that are proving popular, or the type of subjects that have the most engagement. Raymond, you spoke briefly before about sort of the pipeline for medical jobs and things like that. I was wondering, has there been a change in patterns in terms of the most popular subjects that you've seen in terms of enrollments, or is it too early to say with something like that?
Maybe unmute myself.
No problem.
Well, the curriculum in the Philippines is really very structured and highly regulated. So as institutions, we don't really have as much elbow room to make short-term changes.
I see.
What we've done so far is really make emergency changes that we think will be needed for at least the coming year, which is like rearranging the sequence of, normally we'd have, for example, chemistry courses with lab courses side by side with them.
Oh yes, your point earlier about moving them back to later in the year.
Yeah, but in terms of the fundamental structure, it's highly regulated, and we normally would need approval from the commission to make any such changes. So we haven't gotten to the point of considering such shifts yet, at least not in my university.
Okay. Do you think there will be a need for this going forward, or is it a case of waiting to sort of see how perhaps the job market will change first before these changes come through? Is it something that's perhaps very difficult to anticipate at the moment?
Well, we think, I think actually, what happens is the pandemic has allowed us to really experiment. So things that we were reluctant to do as an institution, we've been forced to do. And that means that, for instance, in graduate programs, it is highly likely that we'd have a lot more online delivery of master's programs for professionals. This is the sort of thing we've been hesitant to do, but in fact, it turns out it makes perfect sense not to have them drive through traffic to get to campus. They can do it online. So we think that even after the pandemic, when things normalize, we'll try to retain things that will be useful for the future, especially for graduate students who are already partly in the job market.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering if any of the other, sorry, Reynaldo, did you have a comment about how perhaps things are changing when you are, both students are looking at the criteria for employabilities and how institutions will need to respond in order to meet that demand?
Well, one pronounced shift in engineering, and we're basically an engineering school, is the number one engineering program until about maybe 6-7 years ago was electronics and communications engineering, which was feeding the semiconductor and the telecommunications sectors. But about that time, there was a shift. The most popular engineering program now is civil engineering.
Okay.
And that's because of, there's a sort of a mini boom in construction in the Philippines. And this is what parents see, this is what students see. And, the market is quick to respond. So suddenly our civil engineering program grew. And that's supposed to be the oldest, not the oldest profession, it's the oldest engineering profession. So, but we're also betting on, a lot of people taking master's programs. 1 or 2 years ago, I was being kidded by people because we started fully online master's program. And at the start, we only had 8 students in one program. But just before the pandemic struck, we already have about 500 students in several programs. So we expect that to grow some more. And in a specific area of business analytics, we've been able to partner with a software company in analytics. And we now have 2 years, and we have, I think, significant number of students in business analytics. And we're now only offering BS data science and MS data science, and we think it's going to be big, no? So I think these are the new things that we can mention right now. So well, yeah. So in terms of content, and in terms of delivery, you see that there are shifting preferences for among students.
Okay, Maria, are there particular skills areas or subject areas that you think will become more popular as the economy changes and more learning shifts to online?
Yeah, I think the science courses, at least in my university, I think they're the health, biology and health sciences and all the rest of it, especially now. Even our medical school, I think, has increased enrollment, the attraction to respond to the needs of society because of COVID-19. That's quite, for students, I think the service orientation is very important. And I think also data science, and in that area, I suppose that would be it. But it's too early to know right now, because as Raymond was saying, our curriculum in the Philippines is quite structured.
Yeah. Philip, are you anticipating any changes in terms of demands for certain subjects, or perhaps will there be greater opportunities unlocked when you start looking at, particularly as we've talked about, the master's students and people who are perhaps coming back into education later in life?
Is that me you're asking?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Marie, if you have a comment, please go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the postgraduate programs, I think, will increase in number because of the online learning is very much of an attraction. There are lots of students that we have out there outside of Metro Manila who are unable to come to Metro Manila simply because, I mean, for practical reasons, they have families, they cannot just travel. But I think this time we expect to have more. A lot more people have been inquiring about online courses at the postgraduate level.
Okay. Philip, is that something that is there a similar pattern in place where you are, or do you think the type of student you educate will change, and will the courses need to change in response to that?
In Cebu, it's a very it's an island, so
yeah,
the master's program is very attractive because people don't have to come over on the weekend. They can do their classes online. And in fact, that has been the demand for some time. Now we are forced to offer it. In terms of the undergraduate programs, the most subscribed are the business and economics and law. The other schools are not really that high. I think computer has some attraction, but because of the internet infrastructure in Cebu, is not really getting some traction. You know, we have more and more students in business and in law, more than any other departments.
I mean, I think what we're probably looking for around the world really is just to see how the economy will shift. And to take Lavier's point, the data we have at the moment seems to be tracking where there are shortages and what skills are needed, be they in data science or business. But until we reach that stage where new types of job begin to emerge, perhaps new industries emerge within that too. It seems to be that was the case that certain jobs will need to unfortunately be swept away by the pandemic, and certain jobs that previously employed a huge amount of people. And when we talk about this in our other discussions, it tends to be, as Lavier's data showed, it's things like the service sector and the retail sector and the hospitality sector are all changing massively, and that change has not fully taken effect yet. But over time, I think what we're probably all waiting for is the new types of jobs to appear in those areas. And at that point, the skills requirement for those jobs will change. And there may be some skills that are universal. The ones that are flagged quite often when THE speaks to academics about this is the need for clear communication, the need for being a good member of a team, and in order to work as part of a team, to take on feedback, critical thinking and problem solving. And yes, these are problems whether you are someone in one of those service sectors, or whether you are an engineer or somebody who is thinking strategically about the world of business. And Philip, I thought it was interesting your point saying about how your geographical location influences so much of what goes on at your university, because when we talk about the shift to online, we talk about it having a huge leveling effect. And of course it does, provided we can sort the access to digital tools and digital platforms with stable internet connections, it does have that possibility. But there will always be that need for a sense of place, and why studying at a particular university in a particular part of the world or a particular part of a country unlocks something unique. And to that point, I think it's like, as we've discussed, it's very difficult to identify skill shortages already, because so much of the job market is changing. And we've identified also the need for the digital infrastructure to be improved, and I think that's certainly true for around the world. Is it still too early to have any real comprehensive future planning that's going on? Is it simply a case of getting through the next academic year, or are you already starting to look to? Raymond, you're nodding away, but I was going to say, is it possible to start looking at maybe a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, or anticipating some changes that are coming in future? I appreciate your point that the curriculum is very set and very structured, but perhaps it's not just a question about students, perhaps it's also a question about what staff need going forward, giving them the best tools in order to do their job. Is that something that universities are going to have to really examine over the course of this academic year and try and learn from? Ronaldo, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we've subscribed to so-called outcomes-based education since 2006, when we wanted to get international accreditation, and they were going to do outcomes-based accreditation. So The outcomes are usually stated in very general terms. So we know what the outcomes for a mechanical engineering program is. But in terms of specific competencies and specific skills, sometimes that's difficult to divine. We have program academic advisory panels here. We invite people from industry, but sometimes you just don't know whom to invite. Is it the CEO? Is it the HR head? It's so hard to distill, the needs, for example, of the semicon industry. What are the skills that are applicable across various companies? So I mean, I saw the number of partners of Coursera. That's huge, and I guess they're able to talk to the appropriate personnel there because the idea is to develop courses that will suit particular skill requirements or competency requirements. That is something that we want to be able to master some more in the years to come. And that's why we've integrated some micro-credential courses already. May I say it here from Coursera, because there are specific there are specific competencies there. So our graduate, on top of the Mapua diploma, they hold some other certificate that might be bankable in certain circumstances. So yes, I think that's in the future we'll have to be able to master that area. When some company says, okay, college degree is disrupted, no longer necessary, we have a 6-month program for you to become an analyst of some sort. Maybe partly true, but I don't think that would be true in a larger sense. You'd still need the engineers, and to be an engineer, you have to know a lot of things, because you may be given complex problems that will involve a lot of competencies. But certainly, these newfangled programs also have a place in today's world. So how do you put all of this together? And in the Philippines, there might be a special challenge of putting all of this in the framework of lifelong learning. We have a qualifications framework. There's a credit transfer system, but lifelong learning will become a slogan, will become a pipe dream, unless it is brought to the ground where you're able to formally gain certain qualifications along the way as you gain in years. So that is something that will still have to be put in place. And we at Mapua, we want to be part of this kind of development.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it seems that you're talking about narrowing the gap partly between industry and academia in terms of that collaboration. Philip, sorry, yes, you had a point to add?
Actually, we did a survey of the students, of the faculty, the parents and the alumni, and one of the things that came out really is the soft skills. I mean, the hard skills like the technology and all these things, it's given. Everybody wants to do that. We can have a lot of instruments for that. But soft skills like critical thinking, ability to work with other people, ability to adjust and all these things. This is something that we have to do ourselves, and there are not really any instrument for that in doing that. And we have to have the students imbue these values, because actually at the end, these are the things which are actually matter in their job, and not only the intellectual capacity, but actually the ability to work with people.
Yeah, so I think so. We covered off in there's been several books about emerging in the previous months about how developing a highly skilled workforce within an engineering background, for example, or business analyst background or data scientist background is there's a limit to how much that workforce can achieve if they can't work together effectively, and there's a limit perhaps to how much students can learn if they can't master those similar skills over the course of their studies. We're nearly at time. I appreciate you all very busy and have other things to schedule. We have about 5 minutes or so. Just if any of you had any questions that you would like to put to your peers, we definitely have time for that. If there's anything you think we've missed, or if there's anything that anybody said earlier that you would like to ask them about, we have, like I say, we have about 5 minutes or so if required.
I'd like to ask something about the Global Skills Index, if I may.
Sure.
So, you know, I've perused that document. There's emergent, etc. There are categories depending upon the percentile. But how is it determined? Do you have the record of the assessments, the kind of, I don't know, the score? If it's a rubric, you know, there's a score that the learners get from all the Coursera courses that are taken. Is that where the quantification occurs, so that you're able to say Philippines is in the emergent category, so much percentile?
Sure. Yeah, happy to answer. So that's a great question. And you know, so what each course on Coursera has is assessments, quizzes, right? So what we do when we look at the proficiency level of an individual, and what we did in the Global Skills Index was to look at where these learners are coming from. So which countries are they coming from? And then when they started doing and completing the courses, what was their performance on those courses? So we looked at multiple things, which we put it in the machine learning model. But broadly, if I were to talk about it, so there were few things that we looked at. One, all the courses on Coursera are divided into the basic level course, intermediate level course, or advanced level course. So how many of those learners took basic level course, or how many of those learners took the advanced level course? So that was one of the filters. Second one was, how did they perform in those assessments? So did I take multiple assessments, multiple attempts to pass that assessment? Or did I take multiple courses to reach the advanced level course? Or did I complete the advanced level course in the first go itself? So we looked at the performance of the learners on the assessments, as well as what kind of courses they took, whether it was a difficult course or an easy course. And we mapped in a model to see where those learners are. So while this is available on the Global Skills Index for different countries, but in the Coursera for Campus platform, this is also available for your own students. So in the Coursera for Campus platform, you can see across your student body, how many students have reached the advanced level skills, how many students have reached the intermediate level skills across domains of business, technology, and data. So at any point of time, the university can just log into the platform and see how their students are doing when they start learning on Coursera. So, and happy to share the Global Skills Index as well after the roundtable over email, so that you can go through it in more detail. But I hope I was able to answer, Dr. Veer.
Thank you.
Okay. Maria, did you have a question as well?
No, really, it was, I was dovetailing with Philip earlier, but maybe that's not relevant anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Sorry, yes. Philip, Raymond, did you have any questions for the group before we? No, we're all done. Okay, great.
Oh, nothing further for me. Thanks.
All right, brilliant. Well, I'd like to thank you all for your contribution today. It's been really interesting. You know, we try to have a global perspective at THE, but with us being based in the UK, it is always perhaps slightly harder to get insights into some of our international colleagues. So it's been hugely instructive for me, and it's definitely interesting comparing and contrasting the responses in different countries and the different challenges that everybody is working with at the moment. I'd just like to echo Lavier's point that it's been a remarkable response, I think, from academia as a whole, and everybody's worked incredibly hard in order to change the way that people are working and studying. And that certainly makes my job very interesting. So thank you all very much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. We will be publishing a report of this discussion and promoting it on the THE and Coursera Hub in due course, and we will circulate those materials with you when they go online. So thank you all very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.